What's up, everybody? So, I truly hope that what I'm about to say is not too controversial, excuse me, for everybody. Oh, love him or hate him, my man Donald J. Trump. He just did something big. Okay. And, politics aside, I'm not going to get into politics. I'm not going to get into border control. I'm not going to get into abortion. I'm not going to get into any of that stuff because this channel has nothing to do with any of that shit. But what this channel does have to do with that this is going to relate to is addiction. And more importantly, the drug that has been ravaging, the United States of America for the last 10 years, maybe more. And I'm talking about fentanyl, obviously. And Donald Trump just passed a bill. So, we've had plenty of politicians come and go who spoke on, the issues with drugs and the war on drugs and all of that stuff. And nothing really ever changed. As a matter of fact, I think it got worse. So, I'm not saying that this bill that Donald Trump just passed is really going to do anything. I'm not, sitting here saying he's a great guy. I'm not doing any of that. I'm not choosing sides. I'm doing nothing of those sorts. What I am doing is I'm talking about this bill because this bill has to do with fentanyl, addiction, and overdose, and this is what I talk about on this channel. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so the bill I am referring to is the HALT Fentynal Act, full name HALT All Lethal Trafficking of Fentanyl Act, officially HR 27 in the House and S. 331 in the Senate during the 119th Congress, blah, blah. Whatever that means. Okay, so President Donald Trump signed into law on July 16th, 2025, with some sources noting the effective public law date as July 17th, 2025, as public law number 119-26. So this is old. Okay, so, I guess this is old. I had something pop up on my Facebook. I saw it. I wanted to talk about it. But, we're going to talk about it anyways because, again, I feel like it's important. So, we'll really be able to tell in 2026 when these statistics come out from the FDA and the CDC and they give us the numbers on how many opioid-related deaths there were, how many overdose-related deaths there were. We got to get the numbers. We got to get the numbers and be able to see, to truly be able to gauge, how much any of this is working. Okay, so what I want to talk about is I want to talk about what this kind of is. First of all, it's a bipartisan measure. So for those of y'all that aren't in tune with any type of political shit like myself, bipartisan means that it's neither a Republican bill or a Democratic bill. They came together on this and they voted together on this bill because obviously, if you didn't vote for something that has to do with cleaning up the streets from this terrible drug and helping people that are suffering from addiction and all that type of shit, you're a piece of shit, straight up, dude. You got if you don't vote on that, you've got somebody's fucking filling your pockets or something, straight up. Okay, so bipartisan measure aimed at combating the fentanyl crisis by strengthening law enforcement tools against illicit versions of the drug. Okay, so key provisions of the bill. It permanently classifies fentanyl-related substances, FRS, as a class into Schedule 1 of the Controlled Substance Act. So what does this mean? I have no idea. So I'm just going to describe it. So I needed to describe it because I have no fucking clue what that means. Okay, so Schedule 1 drugs are considered to have a high potential for abuse, no accepted medical use in this context for illicit forms, and are subject to the strictest federal controls and penalties. Okay, so what this means is if I'm trafficking marijuana and I get pulled over and I've got 10 pounds of marijuana in my trunk, whatever. Whatever happens, happens. But if I get pulled over and I've got 10 pounds of fucking fentanyl in my trunk, I'm fried. You know what I mean? That's what this means. So what it's really aiming at and what it means by this Schedule 1 classification is that it's far more severe if you're getting caught with this kind of drug. So what I'm feeling like this is doing is it's probably putting this emphasis on making it a Schedule 1, which I thought it already was. But anyways, they're doing this to try and sway people away from selling this drug. But, in my opinion, I feel like this doesn't work because, if you do get less people wanting to sell it, the price of it goes up and then, more people start selling it and then it's a revolving door. It just starts back over again. Okay, so previously many fentanyl analogs and related compounds had been under temporary scheduling since 2018. I did not know this, which required periodic extensions and created uncertainty for prosecutions. I did not know that. Okay, wow. Okay, I always thought that fentanyl was a Schedule 1, so that's actually really interesting. So the law aligns penalties for offenses involving these substances with those for fentanyl analogs, for example. So if for those of y'all that don't know what fentanyl analogs are, an analog drug is a drug that is like super similar to whatever the compound is that makes up whatever the drug it's trying to mimic is. And it might be one molecule off from fentanyl, and it's some other drug that's not necessarily, it hasn't been classified yet. That's how people kind of get around selling it or whatever, you know what I mean? But yeah, that's analog drugs. Okay, so it explicitly does not affect legally manufactured medical grade fentanyl used in healthcare, surgeries, or pain management. Congressional intent was clarified to protect legitimate medical supply chains. And that's fun because, fentanyl is a really important drug in the actual medical community. Like, they use it for a lot of shit, Somebody gets in a car wreck, loses one of their fucking legs, they're going to give them fucking fentanyl. It's important. They need it for surgeries, and that's what it's for. You know what I mean? That's what it's for. So, whatever. Okay, so background and passage. Okay, so the bill had bipartisan support. That's good. Passing the House with a strong vote. Shit, dude. Why would you not vote on something like this? This is the type of shit that just drives me crazy because I look at it and I'm like, this makes no sense. Like, why would you not vote on something that literally the whole point of it is to help better the lives of Americans? And it makes no sense at all. And it pisses me off. And I'm not trying to get on here and rant or do anything like that, but like, there's something sus going on with all this shit, straight up. Okay, so key sponsors included Republicans like Senator Bill Cassidy, Senator Chuck Grassley, I think he's out of Kentucky, I might be wrong, and House members with some I think I'm wrong on that actually. With some Democratic co-sponsors, Pat Ryan was highlighted for pushing it. Trump signed it at a White House ceremony surrounded by lawmakers and family members. Okay, so this is all fine and good. This is great, but this bill's old, and it's not really what I was wanting to talk about. So what I wanted to talk about, and I'm going to pull it up on my phone real quick because I can't seem to fucking find it on my laptop. Okay. Let's see. First of all, I'm going to check and see if it's actually a credible source because, there's a ton of fake shit on the internet. Okay, let's see what we got going on. VD Oasis. Okay, so Trump launches addiction recovery plan focused on prevention, not punishment. Okay, so I'm Video Oasis. I don't know what that is. I don't know how factual this is, but if it's real, it's great, and I'm gonna read it to you because I feel like it's important for. We need to hear it. Hopefully it's real. It could be false. I'll do a little digging and I'll jump back on here and I'll tell y'all if it's actually, and I'll actually, fuck it, I'll fact check it while I'm on here. But let's just read this real quick. Okay, so what this says, President Donald Trump signed an executive order this week launching the Great American Recovery Initiative, a nationwide shift in how the U.S. approaches addiction. The plan treats substance use disorder as a chronic medical condition, not a moral failure, with a clear focus on early intervention, long-term recovery support, and local partnerships. It brings together federal agencies with faith groups, tribal nations, community leaders, and health providers, aiming to stop addiction before it becomes lifelong and to support families already living with it. Okay, so just that first part. If this is fake, that sucks, and whoever wrote this needs to be sitting wherever these people that voted fucking no on this first bill are sitting right now. You know, like, fuck, dude. It's fucking crazy, dude. Okay. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. put it plainly, addiction is treatable, but the system has been fragmented for too long. Co-chair Catherine Burgum, speaking for her own 23 years in recovery, reminded Americans that recovery is possible and deeply personal. Catherine Burgum, I don't know who that is, but I'm going to check her out because 23 years in recovery, that's a big fucking deal. So, okay, let me see what this is. This is called the Great American Recovery Initiative. Let's see if this pops up, what we trying to check out. Okay. All right, I like it. A bunch of shit popped up. Here we go. This is what I'm talking about. So great. I'm glad I looked this up. So the Great American Recovery Initiative is a major initiative launched by President Donald Trump via an executive order signed on January 29th, 2026, titled Addressing Addiction Through the Great American Recovery Initiative. Okay, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I meant to be talking about all along, so I apologize. First thing was important, whatever, but this is what I want to get into. Okay. So it focuses primarily on combating the addiction crisis, especially opioid and substance use disorders, recognizing addiction as a chronic treatable disease and coordinating a national response to save lives, restore families, and rebuild communities impacted by addiction, homelessness, and related issues. This is great. If we can get a grasp on this right now, it'd be awesome. Everything that they just hit on in the small paragraph is everything that is wrong with, people that are in active addiction right now. So, and what I mean by that is, I feel like you go to these treatment centers and you're in these treatment centers and they talk to you and they tell you that this is something that this is going to be with you for the rest of your life. And that's true. You know what I'm saying? I'm not hating on that. But this is a treatable disease. And it is a disease. That's the first thing that people need to understand when it comes to addiction. Like, this is a disease. It's not something that just happens. It's literally a genetic disorder that you're born with. And, people might argue with me, but, this is what I believe wholeheartedly. So, it's a treatable disease, and coordinating a national response to save lives, restore families, because a lot of this stuff stems from your family interactions, how you grew up, what the environment you grew up in was like. That's the type of stuff that really contributes to what path you decide to take in life, whether that be going to college, becoming completely successful, or becoming a drug addict. And, and rebuild communities impacted by addiction. You look at these places like, Eastern West Virginia, where the opioid crisis started. Like, it's just, it's nothing. You know what I mean? You go, like, even where I live right now, I live in Durham. And it's a love-hate relationship for sure. I mean, I think it's a great place, but, there's a lot of places that are not so great, and they don't look great, and the infrastructure sucks, and it's fucked up, and taxpayers, they pay for, and myself included, we pay for these playgrounds and park and recreation. They put these parks in, and you can't even take your kids to them because it's fucking nothing but people using in the woods, strung out on the slides, fucking got tents pitched under the gazebo in the it sucks. You know what I mean? And like I know how it is. I was homeless for almost 2 years, and like I completely understand how that is. But this is great, you know. And the next thing, homelessness and related issues, like this is a huge fucking thing. And the most important thing to show these people that are going through homelessness and are, you know, don't have anywhere to go and are in these types of situations is that there is another way. And I feel like, you know, for me, like the reason I didn't jump on the boat where I'm like, all right, yeah, I need to change my life is because I knew it was going to be a lot of work. And, you know, quite frankly, when I was getting high, I didn't give a fuck about anything really. And I definitely didn't feel like doing any type of work, you know? So if he can find some way to combat this homelessness and get people motivated, but you know, like it's like I was listening to I don't know if y'all know what Matt and Shane's Secret Podcast is. Great podcast, I fucking love it, and they're hilarious. But you know, he said Matt McCusker said, "How do you get these guys pumped?" And you know that resonates with me. How do you get these guys that are on the streets, have maybe been on the streets for years? Like, how do you get them hyped to do something different with their life? If you can solve that code, Donald Trump, that'd be awesome, dude. Or any of your lawmakers. Like, that's the main thing. There needs to be some sense of motivation that we're bringing to these people that are out here in the streets, that are begging for money, that are doing these things. Because if we can't get them any sense of motivation, they're just going to stay in the same place that they're in. And, you know, I feel like that starts with coming up with easily accessible forms of, you know, help. Okay, so establish the White House Great Coordinated Federal Effort, co-chaired by the Secretary. Okay, so RFK, man, co-chaired this. That's awesome. And I didn't even know that this was a position in the United States government, but there's a senior advisor for addiction recovery, and this is that Catherine Burgum chick. So I'm not sure who this is. I'm really interested, so I might do a video on her. But here's the main goals and provisions: increase public awareness of addiction as a disease, advise, and that's so important. Because, you know, I feel like some people, they look at these people like, oh, we made a fucking terrible life choice and we're just scum of the earth. You know, like, we need to get the normal, everyday people to understand that this is a disease and it's something that's not just really a lifestyle choice. It's something that you have to put work into to get out of. Like, you know, like, it's important to educate the public on what this is. So, advise federal agencies on implementing programs for prevention, early intervention, treatment, recovery, support, and reentry. So this is great. You know, catch it young. You know, like, I know this is going to sound corny and you're going to be like, oh, come on, dude, blah, blah, blah. But this is real shit. Like, I've had a substantial amount of people tell me that the DARE program worked. And, you know, like, I'm obviously not one of those people. I thought it was the corniest shit ever and didn't pay attention to it at all. But, you know, like, I've heard multiple people be like, yo, you know, so, like, what I'm getting at, and I'm not trying to get too off track, but what I'm getting at is that's number one, is catching it early. Maybe finding a way to prevent it from even starting. You know, after school programs for people that might be, you know, misfortunate, not have the best life going on at home, might not have a lot of friends, whatever. You know what I mean? The things that taper off and then become the things that cause us to indulge in our addiction issues. So, I think that's super important. Getting involved with the youth, trying to prevent this from happening in the first place. You know, I think that's a huge deal. Consult and partner with states, tribal governments, local entities, faith communities, community-based organizations, healthcare providers, and private sector. Yeah, I mean, this all just, I mean, this, I'm not going to go too much into it anymore. But, I mean, okay, this is just, so as of February 2026, on February 2nd, 2026, Secretary Kennedy announced a $100 million investment under the initiative to address homelessness, fight opioid addiction, improve public safety, and expand treatment focused on recovery and self-sufficiency. Okay, so first thing I'm going to say, and I might sound condescending or kind of like an asshole, but $100 million doesn't seem like that much money. Now, if we're talking about in the context of me having $100 million, it's a lot of fucking money. You know, I'm set for life, whatever. But when it comes to the government, like $100 million, like it just doesn't seem like that much bread. I could be tripping, you know, but like I think we sent Ukraine like trillions and trillions of dollars. $100 million. Okay. Maybe it's enough. Maybe I should shut the fuck up. Maybe it's enough money. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it. I'm just going to go ahead and be honest. It doesn't seem like a huge investment. It's not. It's not a lot of money at all. Not a huge investment, but hopefully it grows, you know? Okay, this includes redirecting funds from assisted outpatient treatment grants and other sources toward community-based care, stable housing, support networks, and programs like medications for opiates. So, okay, so I'm going to go into this, and a lot of people are probably not going to agree with what I'm going to say on this, but it's my opinion, and I want to get it out there. So I am not big on the MAP program. I'm not big on replacement therapy. I'm not big on maintenance. And I'm going to tell you why. So the treatment center I went to, it was a 2-year-long program. And it's the kind of place you go to when you want to get cleaned, when you don't have another option, when you are at the fucking bottom of the barrel, you have nothing left to live for, and your only option is to get clean. That's it. You don't have another option, you know? So you want to get clean. At this point in your life, you want to get clean. There's no replacement therapy. There's no maintenance. It's you go, you work your fucking ass off for 2 years, and, you know, at the end of it, you're more mature. You know yourself better. You hold yourself accountable for the bullshit that you do. You don't make impulsive decisions anymore. You think before you act. You listen to your intuition. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But I just feel like it's an easy way out. And I am not trying to get too passionate about this, but I'm not a big pharmaceutical company guy. I don't like them. I don't agree with anything that they do. And I will say that, you know, some of these pharmaceutical companies have produced medications that have saved millions of lives, but they've also produced a lot of medications that have taken a lot of lives. And to me, it seems like these companies that prescribed OxyContin back in the early 90s that destroyed tons of lives, they sold you the problem. And then they come out with these replacement therapy drugs. That's your Suboxone, Sublocade, Subsolve, Subutex, whatever you want to, whatever, there's a fucking bajillion of them. They're selling you the solution. That's all it is. I feel like you're just trading in one thing for another. And I'm not taking away from anybody who this has helped. And, you know, like, I'm not doing that, you know, but I know a ton of people that it hasn't helped. In fact, it's really made their situation a lot worse. So, you know, that's just me. I don't agree with it. I don't feel like we should be putting a ton of money into it, even though, well, I mean, we got fucking $100 million to work with. What can we do with that $100 million? Nothing, really. I mean, what? Fucking $100 million, dude. That's like pocket change to the U.S. government. I'm just going to go ahead and say that. That's fucking crazy to me. Interesting. So, this is cool because it seems like somebody's disagreeing with it. Okay, so I'm just going to read this whole little paragraph to you. This fits into Trump's ongoing focus on the fentanyl opioid crisis, building on things like the HALT Fentynal Act. That's what we talked about earlier. Beautiful. This bleeds into this, so that's good. I didn't talk about the first thing for no goddamn reason. Okay, so Fentanyl Act you asked about earlier. Oh, thank you, Grok. Listen to this. I'm just going to restart. This fits into Trump's ongoing focus on the fentanyl opioid crisis, building on things like the HALT Fentynal Act you asked about earlier. Thank you, Grok. Supporters highlight it as a comprehensive, recovery-oriented approach involving faith, communities, and evidence-based care. Some critics from libertarian perspectives. So I'm not really sure what the fuck a libertarian is. Okay, so I'm not gonna speak too much. I don't know what I really don't. I know Democrat, Republican, Independent. I'm not really sure where libertarian falls in. I'm not gonna gauge it off of this next sentence because I don't think it really gives a clear perspective of what a libertarian is necessarily. But okay, here's the libertarian perspective. Argues it relies too much on central coordination without major regulatory reforms to expand treatment accesses. I don't know what that means. Honestly, I'm not even going to sit here and act like I know what the fuck that means, because I don't. Okay, so for the official text, check the White House site, or I'm not going to do all that. Details on the $100 million investment. Let's see what the fuck's going on here. Okay, the $100 million investment in the Great American Recovery Initiative was announced by Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy during an event making Prevention Day, hosted by Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administrator SAMHSA. I guess that's the acronym. It serves as a key implementation step following President Trump's executive order from January 29, 2026, establishing the initiative core program, the STREETS Initiative. Okay, so the funding primarily launches the Safety Through Recovery Engagement and Evidence-Based Treatment and Support STREETS pilot program. So, again, that's the acronym for Safety Through Recovery Engagement and Evidence-Based Treatment and Supports. It's a hell of a name. Pilot program. This targets the intersections of homelessness, substance use disorder, especially opioids, mental illness, and public safety in 8 major U.S. cities, specific cities, not yet publicly detailed and announced. Why? Why are they only doing this in 8 cities? Is this just a is it a trial run? Like, I'm confused. Okay, so, additional funding and shifts. A separate $10 million in grants was highlighted for expanding assisted outpatient treatment. So, okay, so, like, one thing I will say is, like, I really like IOPs, intensive outpatient, assisted outpatient, whatever. Like, these are important parts of recovery because, you know, in some cases it could be your last step to, like, you know, going out there on your own. Like, I'm cool with that. You know, you put $10 million into these places, it's probably not going to do much, but fuck it, dude. It's $10 million more than they had. All right. I think that's all I'm going to talk on this for. You know, if anything new comes up, I'll jump on here and we'll talk about it. I mean, so the bottom line is, like, it sounds good. You know, it sounds cool. But how much of a difference is it going to make? That's the main question. And that's a question that me nor anybody else in the fucking world has an answer to. You know, I think Trump has done a really good job of, you know, stemming the flow of drugs coming in to the United States from Mexico via China. You know, like, I feel like these are important things that need to be dealt with and taken care of. And the more lackadaisical we get with this, people need to understand that the more it's going to happen until we stand up and we take a stand against people, you know, weaponizing drugs and killing our youth, and until we, like, show force that we're not going to fucking stand for this shit anymore, you know, nothing's going to change. It's just going to be the same. And, you know, like, you know, you can't beat a pit bull being a fucking chihuahua. You know, it's just not gonna fucking happen. It's not gonna happen, dude. You gotta boss up. You gotta man up, and we gotta make a stand. We can't let people continue to pump this bullshit into our country. I mean, straight up, it's killing kids. It's killed my friends. It's almost killed me. And that's it. Anyways, please like, comment, and subscribe. If you liked this video, let me know why. If you fucking hated it, let me know why. If I'm wrong about anything, please let me know. And I will do my best to correct myself in the next video. Again, I'm not a political expert. I don't know a ton about politics, really, honestly, swear to God. And I just thought that this was something that was important that we could sit here and we could talk about. And this is an addiction podcast. That's what I do. I talk about addiction. I interview people that suffer from addiction and have found a way out of it and are now recovering addicts. That's a very, very important part of my life. So, if you or somebody you know wants to get on the podcast that we do, don't be afraid to hit me up at bendoesaddiction@gmail.com. You can email me anytime. I will do my best to respond. You can also find us on Facebook at bendoesaddiction. And you can find us on Instagram with the same handle. And also, you can check us out here on YouTube. And you can also check us out on Spotify at the Ben Does Addiction podcast. Thank y'all so much. I will be updating a new episode of the podcast as soon as possible. I've been having some technical difficulties with my laptop. I think I got to put a new battery in it. I fucking fried it. So that will be done. And we will take care of this stuff, and we'll get it back rolling. And thank y'all so much for tuning in. I love y'all. Y'all have a good night.